Hi, my name is Caroline Francis, and I'm Director of UK Alumni Career Services. I'm joined today by UK alumnus John Lambert. Welcome, John.
Good morning.
We're thrilled to have you with us. Why don't you tell us a little bit about your career path since you've graduated from UK?
Sure. Well, it's been kind of a long and winding road, I guess you could say. I graduated from UK in 1980 with a bachelor's in civil engineering and stayed on to get a master's in 1981 in civil engineering. My specialty was in hydraulics. And then after I got my degrees, I never worked in civil engineering. So I was trying to get jobs. I wanted to go south. We'd had really challenging winters in 77, 78. And so I was bound and determined to go south and sent a lot of letters out, interviewed with a couple of companies, consulting firms in Florida. Had an offer that was okay, but then the oil companies came to campus, and I had a couple of oil companies make offers and ultimately decided to go with Exxon down in New Orleans. So that was my first job after graduating. I was in New Orleans learning all about petroleum engineering, which I had not studied previously. Then oil prices started to drop. Exxon had their first round of layoffs, and being one of the younger members, I was caught. I had a headhunter find me a job actually in oil and gas banking, lending in California. So the idea there is that as a petroleum engineer, I would help the bank evaluate the reserves that they were loaning against. So I moved to Los Angeles. I think I knew one person in the whole city, which had been my assistant band director at Kentucky. He was the band director at UCLA. He had gotten the job there. Took the job there. I arrived and they said, you are also a loan officer, so we need you to go to business school. So they pushed me to go to night school to business, and was fortunate that I got accepted to UCLA. And so went to UCLA at nights while I was working during the day. The oil industry, again, continued to turn south. This is in the mid 80s, and they closed down the oil and gas department at the Bank of California. But they started up a power plant financing, what they call project financing group, in the bank there. So I went to work in the project financing group, financing power plants. This is in the early days of what they call the independent power industry. So I was there for several years as a banker, and then left the bank and went to work for a developer who was developing power plants as their chief financial officer. And at that time, there weren't, this is kind of the early 90s, and there were not many opportunities to develop power plants in the US. So we started looking at international opportunities, and I think I was manning the phones one day when the opportunity came in for a project in Pakistan. So I spent the next 3 years kind of shuttling back and forth between Los Angeles and Pakistan, trying to negotiate for the rights to build a power plant in Pakistan. Our company was looking at potential opportunities in China, and we all thought we were going to be fabulously wealthy with all the big power plants that we were going to build. After 3 years in the Pakistan project, our funding partner decided right when the project was ready to start construction that they didn't want to be a part of it. So they bought us out of our position, and they ultimately sold it then to another company who actually did build the project, and it's still operating today. So I was interviewing with a utility in LA. I wanted to stay in the Orange County, LA area. And right the day they were supposed to make me an offer, they had a hiring freeze. My wife was expecting at the time. And at the same time, I'd been kind of on a lark, interviewing with a company in Houston, an innovative energy company there, and called Enron, that you may have heard of. So when the hiring freeze happened in Southern California, then I turned to my wife and said, I guess we're moving to Houston. So we moved to Houston. This was early 2000 or 1997, I guess. And I was with Enron for 3 years, which was quite a learning experience. You know, the good, the bad, the ugly, all kinds of things I experienced there. But then in early 2000, my wife and I decided that we just really didn't like the atmosphere there. And so I decided to go ahead and quit Enron. And turned out it was a good thing to do because I was able to sell my option shares, et cetera, at a much better price than people later got, which was zero. So I took a couple of years off, and then when my daughter was young, and then when she went to full-time kindergarten, went back out in the workforce and started working for a small independent power company. It was based in New Jersey, and they ultimately sold most of the company to Bear Stearns. So this is in 2007. And then, so I was an employee of Bear Stearns down in Houston. And then, of course, Bear Stearns had to be bailed out in 2008 by JP Morgan during the crisis. So I went to work for JP Morgan. And at that point, I was doing what they call asset management. That is managing the business of the power plants. So we've got accounting people, but we also we oversee the people at the plant, the operators. We oversee the regulatory compliance. We look at property taxes, try to minimize those. So all the business parts of the power plant, and we negotiate power sales contracts, fuel supply agreements, all those things. So I was with JP Morgan for, I guess, about 2 years after that. And then JP Morgan gave several of us who were doing asset management the opportunity to kind of split off and form our own company and continue to manage JP Morgan's assets on a contractual basis. So 10 years ago, a little over 10 years ago, in 2010, the end of 2010, we started Tateswood Energy Company. So the name actually is derived from the street my wife grew up on in Lexington, just off of Tates Creek. There's a Tateswood Drive. So that's where the name came from. So my partners and I have had Tateswood Energy now for over 10 years. And we typically are managing anywhere from 6 to 8 power plants. Right now, we've got power plants that we manage in California, Maryland, Texas, and Massachusetts. And then we have a wind farm that we manage up in Minnesota. We've managed a couple of biomass plants before. So we've managed plants all over. So it's never a dull moment with it, but that's kind of my career.
Fascinating. You've certainly had to pivot a few times in your career. That
yes.
Fortunately, like you certainly took advantage of opportunities along the way as well. What are some of the lessons that you've learned along the way in your career?
Well, I think what you mentioned about pivoting, you have to, it's important to be focused and to have a plan, if you will, on where you want to go. But then when life brings detours, you have to be able to have the flexibility to pivot. And I think that's been one of the themes of my career. Another thing that I would say is you never know when your unique background will be just exactly what someone else is looking for. There were times in my career where I said, there's who in the world would want my background? I didn't work in my degree area. I don't have a degree in the area I did work, and the area I did work is, not a good industry to be in. And yet the next opportunity would be just the perfect place for me to land. So.
Great. What do you know now that you wish you would have known a little earlier in your career?
Gosh, probably I would say to be a little more relaxed about how my career is going. Obviously, anytime that you have to make a job change, it's very stressful. And again, there were times when I really worried that I wouldn't be able to find anything. But I think that's important, and also the importance, I think, of personal interaction. Things to me that have been important is making connections with other people in your industry, um, and really developing the ability to sell yourself. I would say interview well, but I think it's also just, being able to sell yourself to people. It really helps you then find other opportunities.
A good life transferable skill for sure.
Yeah.
Have you had any career defining moments, John?
Ah, it's hard to say. It seemed like it was, a, I mean, I would either say no, or I would say there have been lots, I guess. There were lots of places where, as you said, I had to pivot. So I don't know any career defining moments. One thing that has been, I think, important for me was the importance of having mentors. Again, I've had a couple of mentors in my career that I was able to engage with and work with several times, and it was important to have their guidance, and also to have them help me connect with opportunities when I needed.
Do you have any special career advice for students or fellow alumni?
I guess I would say broaden yourself, whether that's in different interests. I think as engineering grads, sometimes we tend to not be as good with kind of the softer skills, whether that's writing or personal interaction. I think those are areas that are very important. I think probably in my career, that was more important than my actual engineering skills, which were never, amazing. But I think it was more being able to interact with people, and learning the business side of things as well.
Certainly sounds like it's come in handy for you. How about sharing with us a favorite UK memory?
Oh boy, I've got a few. Oh, let's see. Well, I was very active in intramural sports at Kentucky, and my senior year, our dorm floor won the basketball intramural championship. So that was a lot of fun. I was there in '78 when Kentucky won the national championship. So that was a lot of fun. Played in the marching band, and had a lot of memories there of football games and road trips. And then was in my senior year, I sang in the what they called the choristers. This was a choir at UK, and we opened up in the spring. This was spring of 1980. We opened up the Singletary Center with a concert there that was conducted by Robert Shaw, who was just an amazing choral conductor and legendary, and it was a really neat experience. So.
Wow. Thank you so much, John, for sharing more about your career path with our UK alumni and friends. We wish you all the best. Thank you so much.
You bet.